We are live and it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today on Sanctuary Live. I'm going to adjust this camera just a little bit here. That works better. Great to have you here. Great show today. Glenn Kaiser is coming up in just a few minutes, and we're always excited to have Glenn on the show. Old friend and one of my favorite people. We're going to have a good time talking about what is band ministry all about. And Glenn's been doing this for a while, so he knows. We're going to have a chat with him. Uh, Jim Laverty's going to join me in a few minutes, and we'll chat with him as well. We're going to talk about Immortal Fest. If you missed it, you missed a good one. And we'll talk about what's going on at Immortal Fest in future years. Want to share that with you as well. But folks, first of all, if you're just joining me, would you sign in? Let me know where you're watching from. It's always great to know who's watching and your location, and always good to see you on the screen. Once again, I appreciate that you're joining us. And Jonas is here. Jonas from Sanctuary, Kenya, Africa. Good to see you today, Jonas. Looking for today's theme. Good. AV, good to see you today. Happy 4 years of GFM's operation. Take over. There you go. All right. Well, and Joel is here. He says, Pastor Bob, even though Australia is not a full-on religious country, we still get a good bit of it and put Australian TV shows on Sunday morning. However, you get a lot more Christian metal festivals than Australia ever does. That's why we need more Christian bands touring Australia. I agree, Joel. I don't know if Parachute is still going on. That was such a great festival. I always loved that one. And maybe Glenn will have some things to share about that too when we get there. Robert is here. Good morning from Minnesota. Good to see you, Robert. Folks, again, if you're just joining us, sign in. Barry, our good friend, is here. Saw him this weekend. It was so good to see you, Barry. And he says good morning to Jim Laverty. And let's say good morning to Jim Laverty. Jim, are you there? There we go.
Everybody.
Your sound isn't on.
My sound isn't on. Uh-oh.
There you go. Now it is.
Okay.
So,
well, good morning. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Now, Jim,
good morning, everybody.
Mary Bondaroff is from California, from Whittier, and her husband, Bill, used to drive all those buses, remember, in the parking lot where we started Sanctuary at the church there? That's how many years ago Mary is from and followed us, and that's awesome. From Whittier, California. Great. Becky is here. Good morning, PB, she says. So folks, sign in. Let us know where you're from. That would be awesome. And Jim, we had a great weekend, and that's what Barry is saying. It was a great time at Immortal last weekend. It really was a great time. Jim, you did some playing.
Yes. I was playing bass with Triton, and it was just awesome. And I just can't, and I just can't remember just a better time. Especially these last two festivals with everybody, just enjoying everybody's company. And playing and seeing all the bands, Sacred Warrior, Les Carlson, Neon Cross, just on down the line. Everybody did a great job. And and you know, the thing that was really great, Bob, was the action that was going on backstage. The bands praying for one another, just fellowshipping with each other, having meals together. You know, when I think back on memories that I've made at some of these events, those are the things that really stand out. You know, it's really great to see all the bands and see everybody playing their set, but it's really the fellowship and the family time. We are metal, we're family, and that phrase is really catching on good. So I've heard many people say that to me, and but that's what I just came away with. So my cup is just full. I'm tired though. I'm exhausted.
Yes.
So, having a Immortal Fest hangover.
Yeah, I know it's true. Well, it was busy, and you know, you not only played with Triton, but you really interacted with everyone through the whole weekend and helped get some things moving, and
Yeah.
it was really a great time. And I love how all the bands are pitching in for each other, you know, helping each other set up, and you know, all of that is so
Oh
good.
yeah. Yeah, and it was one of the coolest things is when like when Triton was done, George Ochoa and some of the guys in Worldview, I was going to move my bass off, and they were on all the bass gear, and they're like, "Don't touch any of this. We got it, man."
Well,
That kind of attitude is just incredible to me.
yes,
And one of the things that was a real blessing to me, Pastor Bob, was all the bands were cheering Triton on, and they were all back. I could see them: Les Carlson, Ray Para, uh, George Ochoa, all those guys. Man, they were all back there, just rooting us on, and that is just felt so good. It was like,
yes,
here's my friends that I've known for 4 decades, and they're
yes,
still doing that. And so, yeah,
yes, and it reminds you of the early days, because that really was true in the early
yeah,
days, wasn't it? Everybody helping each other, roading for each other, cheering each other on,
hmm
and and then an incredible moment, Jim, and my favorite moment of the whole festival was when Sacred Warrior was playing, and they brought all the bands and everybody up, and the stage was lined with everyone. And in the
yes,
main microphone was our own Crystal from our
mm,
worship band, and Les Carlson and Ray Para, and then all these great musicians. You were there playing, and and everybody did "Holy, Holy, Holy" together, and it was incredible. I have it on my website
mm.
if you want to watch it on Facebook. But incredible the power of that, and you know, sitting in the audience, you just got goosebumps because it turned the concert into praise and worship.
It really did. And the really neat part about that is that the Sanctuary Worship Team and the First Immortal Festival put
Yeah.
that in our set,
Yes.
and we did our best Sacred Warrior, and so we were ready.
Yes.
And and I heard Ray Paris say something to Crystal that was really really cool. He said, "I want you singing in my mic." I heard him say that.
Oh
And
wow.
she's a great vocalist, and it was just, that was just one of those magic moments, and somebody got a picture of it, and
Yeah.
there must have been 25 people from various bands out there. And so
That is
and
so
and one of the neat little parts during the Triton show was, um, they do a song called Mr. Electric, and we gave like 20 people these blow up guitars,
yeah.
Dorn Report, and they all came flooding out onto the stage, and unexpectedly, um, uh, Les Carlson came out, and I believe Repair came out too, and we were just all rocking together, and and I thought to myself, this could be one of the funnest moments of my
Yeah.
life.
I know.
So
Totally
it was
cool.
great, yeah. So
Totally cool. And you know, it was and just great to see people on stage again that we don't always
mm,
see. Neon
yeah,
Cross, you know, it
yeah,
was great. And you know, the very last band of the whole weekend, Apologetics, hadn't played for 7 years,
mm,
and they have 74 albums, I believe, out. I mean, these guys they're amazing,
no,
and the crowd loved them. But it was, you know, we had some older ones. Apologetics, Daniel Band played, um, and it was great. It's always great to get some of the old bands back together, but it's especially good when the family gets back
oh,
together.
I know. So,
That's the
Bob,
best.
can I tell you a secret? You see
Okay.
this little thing? You see this little item right here?
Yes.
That's a thumb drive with every apologetic song on it. I
Of
cannot
course.
wait. Oh
I
yeah.
know. I
Oh,
know.
I love those guys, man.
I do too.
They do those parody songs, and they change the lyrics, and what's so funny about them is that here I am, I'm backstage, and I hear this, girl, You really got me now,
Yeah,
and it's like, and I thought to myself, okay, so Steve hired a cover band to close out the night,
yeah,
and then I want my MTV, and I was like, well, this is really interesting thing to do, and but then as I was listening closer, I was like, those aren't not quite the lyrics, so it was definitely a lot of fun.
yeah. And they're great. They're. I always call them the Weird Al of Christian music,
They
the Weird
are,
Yankovic of Christian music.
yeah.
But
So they have
so
800 songs. So
yeah.
anyway,
So Jim, next year is the 40th anniversary of Sanctuary. We're going to do the 40th anniversary family reunion festival next summer at the same location. And that'll be the first Immortal Fest for next year. The one in July will be the Sanctuary reunion and celebration of 40 years. And then I believe we're going to do the second Immortal Fest too over Labor Day weekend. But there was some talk about not doing them anymore, and I think Steve got a little second wind, and so we'll be doing it. But we'd like all of our friends to be there. Ken Templin says, "Hello, it's Tracy. I manage Ken's page. Great, wasn't it great to see Ken Templin
oh,
on
hey,
stage?"
let me just say that guy is an amazing vocalist, and man, their
Yes,
songs were so good. And they ended their set with "No Longer Slaves," which was a
yes,
phenomenal version of that song. And it is really cool to see some of these bands ending their sets with worship,
yeah.
and the whole crowd was singing along with them. And at the end, I mean, Ken hit this note that was, it's like, that's impossible. How can he do
I
it?
know,
He's still just such a
right?
great vocalist and awesome
Awesome.
guy. So
But Jim, the my favorite part is just seeing old friends.
I
I
know.
hadn't seen Ken for probably 30 years. And he was sitting behind a table, and I spotted him, and he spotted me, and we had a good reunion because it's we used to do Metal Missionaries together. Remember
Yep.
our Metal Missionaries meeting? We get all the bands together. We'd have Ken speak. He was so good at it, and talking about and that's kind of what we're going to do today with Glenn Kaiser. It's just people with some great heart and a good you know a lot of experience in the industry have a lot to teach us all, don't they?
If I might just break in and make a comment about that, Pastor Bob.
Yes.
So, it was Friday or Saturday night. I sat at the Triton booth and I watched the whole show from the booth. And it was so fun seeing Neon Cross. Now, I have not seen Don Webster and Dave Perdue in probably 30 years, maybe
Yes.
longer. And so it was such a treat watching them. And Dave Perdue, man, that guy can flat out. I mean, his pipes are just as good as they were.
Yes. Yes.
And but to your point is that so Dave Perdue came back the final night, and we all stayed in the same Airbnb for the final evening. And I didn't realize that Dave was going to be there. And I wound up talking to him till like 2:30 in the morning. And we were just catching up and just laughing about old times and just reminiscing about the days at Barren Cross and Neon Cross and Guardian and
Yeah.
Bloodgood and all these bands would play together and funny stories. And we were just on the floor laughing. It was such a great time.
That's so
And
awesome. And
yeah.
I love that part of it, that we have such good history.
Hmm.
Jim, speaking of history, we have Glenn Kaiser with us today.
Ooh, I can't wait.
Glenn and I have been friends for a very long time. And I was at the very first, well, I was at the record release for the first album at CMA that year, Christian Booksellers Association. I believe it was in Denver.
Yeah.
And I remember being blown away. And gosh, all of these years later, it's still one of my favorite albums, still one of my favorite bands. And he absolutely is one of my favorite people. We're going to have Glenn join us in just a minute. Jim, can you stick around with us for a little while?
Absolutely. I would absolutely love to stick around.
Great. We're going to
Yeah.
bring Glenn on in just a minute. Folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And we're back. Folks, thank you for joining us today. Again, if you're just joining us, let us know where you're watching from. It's always good to know that. Well, I'm excited for our next guest. And Glenn has been a good friend for a long time. And Glenn KAISER, welcome.
Well, I'm just glad to be able to be with you this morning, and good to see Jim again after so many years.
I know it's been a minute, Glenn, hasn't it?
And wasn't it your wife? You guys were playing a blues set, I think, at GMA week one time. Anyway, somebody did your wife do the work for Epiphone and Gibson and so forth? Not your wife.
No, I think you're thinking of Martha Sorensen.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I was wandering through and I heard real blues being played, which I'd never heard down there. And I got in front and I got on my knees and smooshed up front. And they didn't have any drums, but they were playing. And it blew me. I was like, man, this is the best. I can't even believe they're doing this, because I never heard it there. And somebody goes, Glenn? And I'm like, yes, Lord. You know,
I know.
what's going on?
It's like when I hear blues music, it's like a lure.
It's just at my core. It's at my core, you know.
I know.
And it's the core of rock. It's the core of metal. Anyway, so I looked my eyes at one of the guitar players. I thought it was really an over. He'll go and don't go anywhere. I'm like, I'm not. I love this. They finished up. His wife was working with Epiphone and Dobro.
Mm-hmm.
The next year, I did an endorsement. The next year, they came to Cornerstone Festival and handed me a brand. She said, "What kind of Epiphone would you be interested in?" I'm like, are you kidding me? Share it and done deal. Would you like a Dobro? I'm like, I can't afford a Dobro. It's like buying a car, you know.
It is like buying a car.
They brought one of those up.
Yeah.
They handed me these two guitars. I broke down and started crying.
No.
That morning, I kid you not, that morning in my personal devotions, I read, "He will restore the years the locust has eaten." Blew me away. I didn't know they were showing up at the festival at that point. And so, you know, I over and over again, you see the provision of God, you know, the grace of God.
I think I had the guitars in my car as we drove up there. And do you remember, Jim, when brought those? Yeah.
Oh, I do remember, and I do remember the Dobro too.
Totally remember that.
Yeah. That's incredible.
But
bless your heart. Good to have you here.
Well, it's a blessing. And if you ask me how I'm doing, here's what I was thinking about this morning. We are metal. We are family. See, it's not that hard.
Wait, keep playing. I got my bass out.
Yeah, but I don't know if I'm in tune with you. This is a little guitar somebody built me way back when.
Oh, dude. Sweet. Oh, man. That's cool, man.
5-position switch on one pickup. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's pretty small. And I'm playing through a cigar box.
Yeah.
Hey, so Glenn, just to let you know that this bass has 5 knobs on them, and I have no idea what they do.
Larry Howard. What a great... Larry Howard, one of the first real deal blues players I heard among believers, among Christians. I can't remember the guy's name, but he said, yeah, I went up front down in Georgia. I go up front, and an old thin black man, and he's cranking out blues, man. He's killing his old beat up guitar with 4 pickups. He said, I never saw so many volumes and tones and controls and switches and all this stuff, and it had a couple of lights on it. So he's playing through this concert. Larry was at a table right up front in this hole-in-the-wall club, and this guy's just killing it. And at one point, Larry was able to go up after the set and talk with him. He said, what do you got up there, you know, and a guitar? He goes, none of that stuff worked, man. It's one tone control, one volume. The rest of this stuff is just for show.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if these are for show. When I move them, they do different things, but I just want one tone control and I want one volume. And the rest of it is it's confusing for me.
Well,
listen, I also don't know anything about the instrument, but I know how to play it. But it's
you know already. It's in the hands.
It's in the hands, and it's in the right hand. The punch for the bass player, the punch. you know. So
It's,
I
Phil
love
Kagi,
talking shop, man. This is so much fun. So
I've heard Phil Kagi play on junk guitars through junk amps, and he still sounds killer. And even what works out the tone, because you bring the tone with you largely. I mean, that's not entirely true, but largely, yeah.
You know what? I've heard the same thing with drummers. You know, you get a great drummer behind a terrible set, and for some reason that set sounds much better when he's playing it. The way they hit, you know, and so I agree with you 100%.
Well, and I've always said you sort of like GKB, the three-piece blues rock group that we do. Ed and Roy they're better players than I am. They are, and the truth is you surround yourself with brilliant people, you start sounding a lot better.
Yeah.
And it brings your game up. It's like playing round ball with Michael Jordan. You get a lot better. Or nowadays, Caitlin Clark. You end up getting a lot better because they elevate your game, and it can be intimidating, and it is. But that's how you learn. That's how you really learn.
Yeah, it is. It is by doing it. Absolutely. So, Glenn, you've been doing this for a while. How many years now since?
Well, I'm 70. I'm 71. I grew up singing. I didn't realize it, but both my parents had been musicians. I didn't know that till I was about 19. They never talked about it. Wow. And my mother smoked 3 packs a day, blew her voice up. Anyway, I grew up singing. I just sang. I sang when I was alone. I'd sang when I was afraid. I was afraid of the dark, and I started singing going up the hill to an old house out in Wisconsin, up there outside the little city limits. And so it went on from there. I mean, I started getting serious about playing guitar when I was about 12. The first band I was 13. And, I was an addict, right? So I came out of dope, sex, music. That was my life. And the unholy trinity, me, myself, and I, controlling me, was a train wreck because I was out of control. And what ended up happening was I learned a bit of bass, I learned some drums, and I ended up actually playing bass in a couple of bands, and from time to time filled in when a drummer got sick and ran out the door during a 3 a night in a club somewhere. This kind of thing happened. So learning to play instruments, and particularly guitar, but primarily a singer, 13 up. And I came to Jesus just before I turned 18. But by that time, I'd been in about 12 bands because I was never satisfied. I was just never at peace and never satisfied. And between that and all the dope, everything but heroin, every way you could put dope in you, I did. And right on the edge of being a full-on alcoholic, drank like a fish. I just wanted to get off. I wanted to be ripped as much as I could. And, those idols were taking me to hell, and they were destroying me and destroying people around me. Got into small-time sort of dope dealing just so I could have more dope. All my money from playing shows, it all went in. Well, and occasionally I'd buy a little food or, buy a pair of leather pants. I had a pretty cool pair of leather pants at one point. But everything else went into drugs, everything. And so coming to Jesus was just rocking. Just before I turned 18. And then, Resurrection Band, started that up, and eventually GKB and solo and jamming with people all the time. And I morphed right back to blues. But yeah, music. Unfortunately, music can be a drug as well. It can be, you can be more focused on sound waves than on relationship to Jesus or relationship to your wife or your husband or brothers and sisters. And you can be so focused on yourself and your identity as a musician, that your identity in Christ starts to take a back seat. And I've seen it happen. And trust me, like anybody, I'm tempted at times to run to this or run to that, and needing to deal with those issues. But yeah, long years, my brother, long years.
Yes. And it's so true that a lot of times the focus becomes me. And as a Christian band, that's not the focus. And that's the main difference between a Christian and secular band.
I would agree.
It really is different.
We got to play, Wendy and I were invited to come. I thought, what do you want, some old fat blues player to come to the Metal Fest? but they invited us last year, and actually we got another invitation, and there was some talk about maybe even having some dear friends, Daniel Band, back us up, because John, Stu, and Roy just had a heart replacement. And he's doing fabulous. You'd never know. It's just incredible. But we got out there and meeting the folks that Jim named, that you named, incredible friends. And really, what you're talking about is koinonia. It's relationship with brothers and sisters in Christ. And on the cultural end, when you're a musician with a bunch of musicians, you don't have to explain a whole lot of stuff, and you usually don't have to defend what you're doing. People that love Jesus and that love music, who are musicians, when we come together, it's really more about the Lord, and just, it's not about how high we got last night or how many chicks we got in bed with us and blah blah blah. It's not. Can we up one another? Can we impress one another? Can we play a better set? Can we blew so and so off the stage? All that kind of stuff begins to go out the window if you're going to mature in Christ. Now, if you want to basically be a spiritual kid the rest of your life, or if you just want to blow the Lord off and use God to get into some smaller fishbowl and make a noise, you can do that as a musician too. But that's not what it means to be a follower of Jesus or loving your brothers and sisters. So I totally related to what Jim talked about, because that was our experience too last year. Not just fans, people. We're all people. We put our pants on the same as each other every morning. I like to demystify the ability to change sound waves. I like to demystify it, because I think sometimes people think, as musicians, the audience, wow, I could never do that, or I'd like to do that, but I got to work a day job and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But if we're not careful, all this can come back to me, not him and others. And if we're doing it, if you're talking about band ministry, the word minister means servant. And throughout the New Testament, Greek, minister, servant. And when you're ministering, you're serving. And you're not serving yourself. It's really not about you. And what I love is pretty much everybody that I know, and I know most of the folks that were on the bill this year as well as last year, these folks it's not about them. They really understand love and commitment to others and to Jesus. And if you're doing that, then we're talking about serving. Yeah. We're not simply talking about placating myself. Lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Even audio pleasure. You can be an idolater as a musician just like that. That music was one of the drugs for me. Being on stage, the identity of being accepted, being loved, being liked. What if tomorrow I get in a car wreck and I can never sing again? What if my hand gets sliced off? And I'm no more guitar, folks. Now what are you going to do? And it's so that the security, the sense of love and acceptance is about him and about others. Band ministry means ministry. It doesn't mean purely band and I get to go and freak everybody out with my power and my glorious talents. Well, what have you received that isn't a gift? What have you been given that isn't a gift?
If I can just comment about that, Glenn. Last year, the guys in Barren Cross did a couple songs with Human Code, and so after the show, people always come back to the merch table and they want to talk to you and stuff. And for me, I always tell people when they come in and say something to me or ask me, you can ask me one question. Okay, I'll give you one question, but give me 3 things about you. Give me a breakdown of what's going on in your life. And the first guy comes up to me and says, he asked me my question, and then I said, so what about you? And he says, well, I'm dealing with heart failure right now. And that just brought that down to a major reality check for me. Yes. Because, this guy is dealing with, the fact that he's got to have a heart transplant. and he's on the list, and he doesn't know if he's going to make it. And so, man, we hit our knees right there, and just prayed for him, And so I think that the band ministry aspect of, hey, look, it's not just about being on the stage. It's about getting out and touching people's lives and finding out what's going on with them. Because every person that I talked to said, I'm dealing with a disease, I'm dealing with a marriage breakup, I'm dealing with, that's one of the first things that they would say. And so you have an opportunity, even if it's just one soul at a time, just to be a minister for the kingdom of God.
Yes, very important.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're being a listener. And what does that person need? I've done so many music seminars of every sort, even musicians' workshops, where the focus really is on teaching, say, well, I remember one in Germany. I think there might have been 5 Christians and the rest weren't. And I don't know, maybe, I can't remember anymore, 80 people, 100 people showed up in a club, nice acoustics, had a guitar, had an amp, had a harmonica, brought a slide, for slide guitar playing, talked about finger style picks, all the basics of what I do and why I do it, the inspiration that comes from Jesus. And anyway, in the process of the whole thing, trying to help people understand what it means. And then I had Q&A, and if I remember correctly, about half of the whole thing was Q&A. And I found that regardless of, I found this at Cornerstone Festival doing seminars year after year as well. Didn't matter what I brought. What mattered was their needs and answering their questions. Yeah. And I found over and over again what they brought to the seminars and to the discussion was way better than anything I'd prepared most of the time.
Most of the percent.
Yeah. So I'm trying to stir people's thoughts. I want people to think deeper about who he is, what he's desiring, what he's doing, and focus on other people's needs. And you can trip over yourself by building your own kingdom. And instead of asking those questions as you did and getting that sort of honest and open-hearted answer, you go way deeper. And that's what, a bro came to Immortal Fest last year, who I had met in Canada years back, and he'd hit the wall spiritually. He'd fallen away, and he'd had for quite a while, and really, I think even began to doubt the existence of God entirely, not just blew out his walk with the Lord, with Jesus, but anyway, he ended up coming back to the Lord. He showed up early at a club up there in on a tour Wendy and I were doing in Canada, and the long and the short of it is his whole life got turned upside down, and it really didn't have a lot to do with the concert or the songs I brought, or what happened at the show. It was way earlier in this longer, extended give and take.
Yeah, I would definitely say that that we have lost the art of authentic listening. And that's why I always say, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. But the reality of life and what people are dealing with every single day, when you think about how important music is, it pales in comparison to somebody that needs a heart transplant. Pales in comparison to somebody that, I was just, talking to a good friend whose mother fell and shattered her hip, her hip bone, and that, I was just talking through with him this morning about what he's gone through with all of that, and in the grand scheme of things, those are the issues of life that are important, in our relationship to Christ and how He helps us navigate those issues every single day. So.
Yeah, very important. So, Glenn, you called me a year ago and said we need to do a podcast or something on band ministry. It's something that's been on your heart for a while, and nobody has done more concerts than you in so many different forms. But you see a lot of other bands that many of them are awesome. Many, though, are missing the mark and missing what being a Christian band is really all about. And some people say, well, we're not a Christian band, we're just Christians in a band, or we've heard that stuff for years. The fact is, if you're a Christian, you have a mission.
Yeah, you do. I mean, Eric Little, the Chariots of Fire guy, died on the mission field in China. And one of the amazing things he said, very simple, but very true. He said, and he's talking about we, all Christians, all of us. He said, we are all missionaries everywhere we may go. Either we overcome the devil by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. It's not just the blood of the Lamb, but we have a testimony, our changed life, the things that God has done, is doing now. You keep learning. You keep learning. As long as you live on this planet, you're going to continue to learn, or you're going to park somewhere. And a lot of people park. I'm saved. I believe Jesus died on the cross for me. I believe God raised him from the grave. Thank you very much. I'm done. I'm in. My name's in the Lamb's Book of Life. That's the end of it. No, actually, that's the beginning of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And by the way, you can't live vicariously through your favorite preacher, teacher, author, Christian, whoever. Yeah. It's your walk with Jesus. It's your time in prayer, pray without ceasing, give and take, and flow. Listen as well as speak. It's your devotion, your time in God's word, studying, meditating on Scripture, soaking in it, really taking the time. It's your confession of sin. We all continue to blow it as believers. None of us are literally perfect, not in this life. And so confessing your faults one another, pray for one another that we may be healed, and so on. There's so much that the real basic foundational stuff that a lot of believers, I think some of them never front fled. So backsliding wasn't that easy, wasn't that difficult. I believe the right stuff. Well, the devil believes the right stuff.
Yeah.
He's still the devil.
Yeah.
He knows the scriptures better than any of us, and he's still Satan. And what we end up doing, if we're not careful, is, again, keeping the focus on us, not on him and others. So it starts with personal walk, daily walk with Jesus, not Sunday for an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours. Whoopee ding. Most people do more in concerts. They're more committed to music and being on stage or hanging out with the cool dudes, and dudettes, than they are with Jesus on a daily basis. And so where's your focus? Where's your focus? And I think sometimes instead of the focus being on God and others. Now, let's talk about bands. A band means more than one person.
Yes.
And every time you add another element, you're adding more frequencies in the spectrum. I woke up the other morning. This honestly almost never happens. I woke up the other morning from a dream, and it kept on going in my head. It was just like never quit. I wake up and I realize I've been dreaming. And I thought of a room full of 18 people or something, all musicians. It didn't feel like it in the dream and when I woke up. It was like a seminar, but it was just a gathering of other Christians who were musicians. And I'm in the dream, and as I woke up, I was thinking about an analogy dealing with two things and teaching, communicating some stuff, both in the practical on musicianship and recording and live shows in terms of frequencies in the spectrum, low, mid, high, the bass all the way up to the high treble stuff, as well as in a stereo spectrum where when you produce an album, when you mix an album, you end up having to think about where you're going to place the drums in that stereo spectrum, where you're going to place each of the drums, whatever. You could spread it all out. Where are you going to put the bass? Where's the guitar? Where's the singer going to be? Two singers. What about a keyboard? And every time you add another element, you add more frequencies. And back to that frequency spectrum of EQ, high to low or low to high. Every time you add another element, the engineer has to think, and particularly the producer, as it gets to that point in the recording of the song or the album, the record, you have to think about where all that's going to fit. Because if you're not careful, you're going to be stepping all over each other in terms of the frequencies. So, you know, it is, wait a minute, that's too complex. I just want to play. Yeah, that's nice. So just get in the car and drive. Who cares about stoplights, pedestrians, people on bikes in Chicago, scooters as well? Who cares? Just get out and drive, right? We run each other over. And a good engineer will, well, let me break it down for you just using one element, bass playing, bass, okay? Are you talking about a precision bass, a Fender Precision? Fender? Are you talking about a jazz bass? Are you talking about a Rickenbacker, which sound quite different? Various tonal elements of the actual bass itself, 4-string, 5-string, 6-string. How about a Fender 6? That's a whole different, you can go on for days with this, right? And so there are different guitars. People set up the volumes and particularly the tone controls as they like, as they wish. Now we're getting into stuff like amps. Okay, you move into the amp. Tube amp, tranny. For bass, you can pretty much go back and forth. There's different elements. They all sound slightly different, some very different. Then you end up with miking, different mics. Which microphone? Now the engineer shows up and goes, well, try this, try that. 2 or 3 or 4 different mics, sometimes choosing to use tube, center of the cone, off the cone. We can go on for days with this analogy. The room itself, the atmosphere, the sound of the room, all this affects the frequencies at which that bass is going to be transmitted into the control room. Now you have the other issue, not just mics, but a DI, a direct box. A lot of people will take a bass amp's direct signal right into the control room, to the mixing console, the desk. So now you got 2 channels, maybe 3, if you're using a couple of mics in the way you're recording, blah, blah, blah. Then you have to think, if you're all playing pretty much live in a room and there's not a lot of little elements of things we block off the sound from different, but you're going to hear the whole group, maybe the singers in a separate room. Now, why do I know this? Well, we've recorded a zillion, I've done about 37 albums now and helped produce some and blah, blah, blah. And we've had a pro studio. I'm sitting right near it. Tone Zone is on the next floor up. 2 studios, A and B. We've done pro recording for decades. And so you begin to understand there are all these different frequencies, and that's just the bass alone. Now let's talk about the guitarist. Or 2 guitarists. Now let's talk about the keyboard player if there's one. Let's talk about the singer. How about singers, plural? Yeah. All of a sudden, the engineer and the producer, when it comes down to mixing an album and making final decisions, and all the band. Now, what do the band want to hear? I want to hear more. I play cowbell, so I want to hear more cowbell. Right? I want to blow with the guitar. I want the bass to roll them out, man. And I got to be inspired. Well, you got incredible quality headphones. You know how people are going to listen to this stuff? You know how they're going to hear it? Junk speakers. Maybe they've got a really optimum system at home. Maybe. Probably through earbuds in a phone, okay? Or in some beat up, whatever your system is in your car, your old van. A lot of people don't have a Ferrari with optimum sound, So you end up with all of these variables. The bass player or the guitarist or the vocalist can get caught up thinking, I want to hear what I want to hear. And I want to hear it just like, and this is the tone that I want. And this is the volume level in the mix with these other instruments in this song. And by the way, at no point in this song do I want to get lost and somehow obscured by another instrument. There's only so many frequencies in the spectrum, boys and girls. Yeah. and thank God for good engineers that have the brains and the ears, good ears, better than a lot of ours after we've blown them out for years, right? And a producer. There are personal opinions, there are personal desires, but the audio spectrum doesn't lie. And you've got what you've got. Well, bring this over to spiritual life. You got one has a song, one has a teaching. We don't all have the same spiritual gifts, right? There are scriptures that speak to all these different spiritual gifts and fruit of the Spirit. Some people are more patient. Some people are more kind. I told Wendy several years ago, love is patient, love is kind, right? What Paul's writing in 1 Corinthians in that chapter on love, that quintessential chapter that defines what love is and isn't. At one point I said, if I was more patient, I'd probably be more loving. Love is patient. Love is kind. I'd probably be a lot more kind, Well, of course, and younger folks, younger in years, in experience, and younger in Christ, in spiritually, are going to sometimes go to this makes my head hurt to think this deeply, to hear stuff that Kaiser said. What are you doing? It's just God's presence and the grace of God, and thank you very much. Can I plug my guitar in and blow, dude? Yeah, you can. And you can blow everybody else off the stage.
Yes.
And you're not a band anymore. It's you and a bunch of backup people. When GKB came together, there's only 3 of us. It's incredible how much noise 3 people can put out, not just in studio, but on a stage. And then you're affected by the room, and you never know what it sounds like. You're not out there doing the mix. Even if you walked out with a wireless system, you'd have to do it while everybody was in the room, because all those bodies affect the sound as well.
Mm-hmm.
The whole spectrum issue of frequency, you're not always on the same frequency as other people in the band. What does it mean to be a band ministry? I would say finding yourself some good and godly friends who love you, who have the guts to call you out.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, right?
Accountability. You need people who really stand by you, but who aren't enamored because you look cool and you sound cool and you're Miss or Mr. Kicker, Killer. It's like, so what? You're a chump meeting Jesus Christ just like everybody else is, right? Come on. Now you're a child of God. Well, of course, everything should go your way, right? You should decide your own sound, your own tone, and every element of it. No, you're in a band. You're in a band. You're with other, what does it say? How many is it? Like 111 love, or at least 80, I think. Love one another, serve one another, care for one another. Do all you do in love. And of course, so we have to learn how to ask forgiveness of one another, because we're going to hurt each other. We're going to disagree. We're going to wound each other. We're going to want more of the frequency in the mix.
Yes.
Than our brother might want, or at a particular point in that song, you want to shine. Have they made room for you? Well, are you making room for them? Is it all in this direction, or should it also be that direction? So I think band minute, by the way, in a nutshell, what I'm talking about, Colossians chapter 3. Years ago in Australia, they asked me to do a seminar for musicians. They gave me 2 hours, and I took about 30, 35, 40 minutes and then did Q&A. Man, it was like, Colossians 3. Colossians chapter 3. Starting around verse 8, really the whole chapter, but starting around verse 8 to about verse 17. And of course, one of the key points, let the word of Christ
dwell in you
richly.
Yes.
Teaching and admonishing, which there's an issue, there's a little bit of a poking, admonishing is not always so there's an element of it's time to grow.
Yeah.
And that kind of a compassion for other brothers and sisters in a band, working together as a band. Now, look, if you simply want, hey, we love the gig, we love to dress like this, we love to play like this, we love to hang like this, we love the crowd and the crowd loving us, we love this kind of church, or whatever it is, whatever. These kind of halls, I have my favorites as well. But at the end of the day, that band won't survive, and it will not exist and thrive as it could or should spiritually unless Jesus is the center. You're in accountable relationship with some good folks locally. You've got, church is not to you anathema. They're all idiots, but I'm enlightened. Okay, you're full of yourself. I don't know if you're full of the Spirit, but you're full of yourself. And this attitude stuff, this chip on the shoulder stuff. So as Jim was saying earlier, and yourself and my experience too, Immortal and many other festivals, the beauty of being with people who can walk in humility, but when you start getting deeper in relationship and over time, And when the floods come and the bus breaks down and the amp messes up and somebody steps on your frequency and I can't hear myself like I want to hear myself, I'm not getting the vibe out of this I came to get. What happens to the band? A lot of people say, I'm out of here. I'm done. I did that in about 12, somewhere, but I counted it up. It was like the 12 and like 16 bands from 13 to 18. But I was not a follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I realized that the most important thing was my relationships to God and my brothers and sisters in the band
Yes.
and in the local church than it ever was my relationship to music or to my fans.
And Glenn, that is monumentally important. Our we call our band ministry, that when the bands get together, we call it band together.
Cool.
Because that's what it
is. Yeah. That's great.
And unless we band together and unless we are hearing the same frequency, we're not able to communicate the love of Jesus Christ. I have to tell you, there was a place in Les Carlson's show that was, noticeably the hairs on your arm stand up. And I watched the crowd, and he's doing his song, The Messiah. And when he says he's the Messiah, it's such a powerful a lyric in the song, but it's such a powerful statement. And I just watched the crowd, all the hands started going up because he was ministering Jesus Christ to the people. And at that point, Glenn Carlson disappeared and Jesus Christ took over. That's our goal, isn't it? For Christ to be honored, for Christ to be, preeminent, and the band needs to kind of disappear as Christ is glorified. Would you say that's honest?
Yeah, absolutely good. Solid. Well, years ago, I took a break from music, right? I came to the Lord, joined this crazy community, Jesus People, which I'm still part of here in Chicago.
Yeah.
And nope, I never heard teaching or preaching at all. I just on music and being a musician, rock music and all that. And I started to. I did a term paper on it 9 months later when I was really convinced I was called. And it was because others called me. You don't call yourself. The call comes from outside of yourself. And what ended up happening was, I threw all the stuff out. I gave all my gear to a Christian band. I threw all the songs I'd written out, about Jesus. I knew that music for me had been a drug. There's no food in it. It was just a nook.
Yeah.
And it was one more thing that I had to let go of. And again, nobody taught me this. Nobody leaned on me. It was a personal, deep conviction that God has got to become first in everything. And so anyway, I had a little burn-out acoustic guitar in a closet. Didn't touch it for, I don't know, a couple months. And then people in leadership called me heard you're a musician, and we'd like to hear you. We'd like to see if you could pop up at the coffee house, do a song or two. Anyway, as time went on, and then the origin of what became Resurrection Band, Res Band, it was so different. For me to walk out on stage at all, to be there, to do that again, and it hadn't been that long of a time that I completely separated myself from being a musician and doing anything with it. But it was so different because the focus was different now. And it wasn't about the Glenn KAISER show and how do you feel. And Wendy will tell you, Wendy in the early days, often I would end up backstage for several months, not every night, but off and on. Says, well, I thought we're horrible. I'm horrible. This is nothing close to what I, had done. But I knew that it was right. And it was important for my life as well as for people out there. And night after night, people were coming to Jesus left, right, and center. It was just, I I didn't make it rain. God, the Holy Spirit does what he does, right? But my whole attitude, perspective on being a Christian musician and being in a band completely changed. And it was shocking to me, because I hadn't done anything. Really, I hadn't done anything except try to surrender and seek God about what's the attitude I need to have. And from time to time, I remember one night in particular, we were in Appleton, Wisconsin. And I'm back there commiserating over what a rotten set we had just, me, not just, judging everybody else or something in the band. And Wendy's like, Glenn Kaiser, you got to get your eyes off yourself.
Wow.
And I'm like, she said, right now, there's a brother up there sharing the good news, and you're back here with your nose in the dirt thinking about the music and the way that the set went.
Mm.
You need to grow. You really need to grow up.
Wow.
And spiritually, you need to mature. And she was right.
Yeah.
And I had to do some serious repenting. And of course, when the focus is so much on me, myself, and I, it's like there's only so much frequency. And it's either going to be about God and others, or it's going to be about me. And I just think, it's a give and it shall be given unto you. Press down, running over. People will pour it back into your lap. It'll come. Don't worry about it. Put it aside. Ask God for the grace to get your eyes off yourself and your brain focused on others. And that's why I talked about what I did in terms of frequencies and bass and, all of these things, because we're all dealing with brokenness, with struggle. When Jim talks about a bro talking about, that's massive stuff. Heart issues, that's massive stuff. So sometimes it just gets ridiculous. I do a lot in prisons and jails, as you know, Bob, and doing a lot of concerts, a lot of music.
Yes.
I've written an entire album for them, which eventually will happen. There's one coming out before that, hopefully fairly soon. It's quite. I don't want to talk about it yet, but I think a lot of people here will relate and probably dig it. There's just a lot of work and a lot of effort. But I would rather be in a room. We've had sometimes one or two guys show up, and other times I've been in front of 350, 400 inmates in various prisons. And to see and hear and interact and chat with them as much as possible. Yes. And even do some Q&A and so on. Who are you? What do you need? What's up? What's going on spiritually between you and God? What do you think about Jesus? What about this scripture that we've looked at? And, what about these songs that you've heard and whatever? And it's just, what can I bring to the table to feed the sheep? Mm. Not what am I having for dinner? The focus changed when it became a Christian band and about being ministers, servants. Let love motivate you, move you to serve one another. Starts with the band, but it's got to go beyond the band.
Yes.
It has to. God didn't put us out there. Look, if all this is about you being some big shot in the musical firmament, and you getting that itch scratched, and you making enough money to be able to do it full time because you hate the day job stuff. If that's really what it's all about, don't call it ministry, because it's not ministry.
Yeah, absolutely. And Glenn, what a wonderful thing when people leave a concert and the thing on their mind wasn't how good the band was, it's how much they appreciated the band putting them in touch with Jesus Christ during the concert. That really is our goal. And it's what are you bringing to the table? Because the band, you'll have another favorite band next year. 20 years from now, you'll forget that you ever were at that concert, and that album will be in back of the pile. And I know.
What, you're forgetting the illustrious moi? Really? I know the world doesn't. It centers or it spins around me.
Yeah.
It doesn't spin around Jesus. It's not about others. It's about me. Oh, God help us. We used to talk about it like we say I-itis. It's I-itis. We've all got that disease. I fall into it at times. Oh, to this day.
Funny, my dad used to say there's no I in team and there's no you in tomorrow.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
So, and there's also no I in band. And because it is like being married. I mean, you got to get along with these guys. You got to show preference to them. They're not always right, but I'm always not always right. And then you got to sleep in a motorhome or a van or a bus with them. And it's like, dude, when are you going to take a shower? And it's just the way it is. So.
Hey, and of course the love offering. Oh, I don't think they love us very much. Whatever. The focus can be so far off of God and others. You're absolutely right. And you're reminding me of a lot of trips in a lot of places.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and can I say too, band ministry, doing mainstream gigs in clubs and in pubs all over the world.
Yes.
In prisons, jails, in indoor, outdoor, whatever, festivals, mainstream or Christian. What is your relationship to the sound guys or women? How are you treating the people out front or back here who are doing the staff, who are doing the show? I remember playing many times in a lot of Denver, Brisbane, Australia, just all over Europe, so many places. One club we played about half full, and it was a huge room, so that was pretty nice. I didn't expect that many people to show up. And right outside the club, they had this incredible painting that filled this massive wall right across the little street of a naked lady, and nobody in the staff liked us because somehow the alcohol sales went south that night. We had a lot of Christians show up. At that time had done a number of albums and toured Germany many times. And anyway, so afterwards, I made it a point to go up to every one of the staff and thank them, and hope they had a good evening, and just whatever. Nobody even wanted to make eye contact. What is your witness? I don't mean pouring it on fake.
Yeah.
Y'all come back now. And they don't want you to come back. And they don't want you to. Yes. I don't mean that kind of hospitality. There's sincerity, and then there's the game that people play to curry favor. I'm not talking about that second thing. So anyway, there are times when I'm convinced we were in that particular church or that particular town more for the promoter than even for the audience.
Yes. Yes.
People that were going through horrible marriages. People that were seeing abuse, people that were dealing with all kinds of issues you would have never known. And it came out in the process of being backstage and having conversation and praying together and so on. And I look back sometimes and I think, okay, like Ulf Christensen from Jerusalem, we would tour together a lot, and he'd be in Hamburg and we'd be somewhere else, Res Band in Jerusalem. We'd meet up again for a few more shows or whatever. How was the show last night? He says, the PA was horrible, but the Lord was good. There are all these elements that if you get your eyes off of him and others, you'll be so focused on creature comforts or, did you feel the sort of adulation and welcome, from the promoters that you think you deserve? Well, we deserve eternal separation from God, and if we get anything else, it's the grace and the mercy of God.
Yep.
And we had better understand that how we treat all of these sound people and other staff in these places we play, and even in the church, even with the hardcore Pharisees. Yes, even with the hardcore Pharisees. Sometimes the only way I was able to communicate with compassion and grace, knowing, they're focused on this stuff. They're focused on the sound and distortion. That can't be of God. How can that be of God? You ever heard thunder, lightning? You think that's always the devil? Anyway, we'd be in these situations and treating with respect and saying thank you. And I would say, sir, when I was talking to some guy who had an attitude, who was at a local church, who thought, who let these idiots in here? The pastor's lost his mind, whatever. And sometimes it would be the pastor, who they just simply wanted to fill the room. What's my heart towards this brother, this sister? How can I show respect and kindness and reflect Jesus Christ?
Yes.
It's the fruit of the Spirit, not just the gifts.
Yes.
Not just the talent, the musical talent. And not everybody's cup of tea is Andre Segovia doing classical music on a nylon string guitar. And not everybody's cup of tea is metal at full volume.
Yeah.
And not everybody's cup of tea is blues, and so on.
Right.
So learning, I'm not on the same frequency, but maybe we can meet somewhere here. How can I be a good witness and a good example? And every now and then somebody go, the last Christian rock band we had in here, there were a couple of these got blah, blah, blah. And, and I'm like, ooh, and oh gosh, I won't say who, but someone who was in another country. And when we rolled in, the manager made it a point after a couple of weeks of this long tour. He said, the last guy we had in here yelled at us because he could only get a 5-star hotel. He didn't like the service.
Wow.
5-star hotel. I'm like, good grief. He's not a missionary or minister. He's a tourist.
Yeah.
He's a tourist. And we don't need any more tourists in Christian music either.
No, we don't. Absolutely. And Glenn, you and I have both been around for a while. We've been doing this for a while. I haven't been in metal forever. I started out with Christian rock and even played it too. But, we've answered those questions. One of the brilliant things that you did, by the way, on your first album, Awaiting Your Reply, was starting it out with Resurrection Band. How did this get in there? Well, here's hoping. And then it goes into the song. I thought that's brilliant because that's exactly what you hear. And it just paved the way for something new. And okay, let's give this a shot. But that scenario still plays out. You and I still travel a lot. I still hear all of those, people that have everything bad to say about the music and it's satanic and it's this and that. And you'd think after all these years that wouldn't be the case, but it is. But I want people to leave a concert not saying that was a great band, but saying, wow, we celebrated our faith. We celebrated the glory of God. And we got to spend some time with this great band who represented Jesus Christ. That's the bottom line, Glenn, isn't it?
Boom, 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 boom. Yes. Again, band ministry.
Yeah.
Band ministry. We really are missionaries.
Yes.
We are not all gifted with the gift of evangelism. Not everybody in a band is. Not every band is. What kind of a witness are we? Just in the broad sense. What kind of a witness? What kind of an example of following Jesus? And I think sometimes we focus so much on the peripheral stuff. And wait a minute, what's the point? What is the point? The point is I wouldn't be alive today except for Jesus.
Yes.
I would have been dead. Trust me. I believe. I don't think I would have gotten past 20 or 21 because I was right on the edge of shooting heroin at that point. And I realized the night I came to faith in Jesus, that very night, I literally said, "You're getting ripped off. This is the worst one-sided deal I ever heard of. I wouldn't do this for me. You went to the cross for me? What? You walked out of the grave for me? I'm not justified by my music. I'm justified by Jesus Christ.
Yes.
I'm not saved by culture. I mean, I happen to have a one woman, many guitars shirt on, but it's not all this. It's him. And the focus is so, I use the word focus all the time because I think it's what are you thinking about? Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, the writer writes. Hopefully the singer sings, the player plays, what we're doing. is ultimately, what have you been, I said it earlier, what have you been given that isn't a gift? So we use them to lift up Jesus, and we use them for, you said it, the glory of God. The glory. I just preached a sermon, I don't know, 2-3 weeks back, something, maybe a month ago, on the whole point is the glory of God. Years ago, I did a music seminar out in New York, and I had my outline right there, very simple, very concise, had an hour shot, and I don't remember how many musicians, but quite a few. They were all musicians. That was the whole point. And by then, Rez had done a number of albums, so people were coming out to hear what I had to say. And I walked up, the applause dies down, and it just hit me. And I heard my mouth say, which totally related to the rest of the message, but it wasn't on the page. I said, I asked a question. I said, who are you glorifying? Just who are we glorifying? What is the point of being a band in Christ? What does it mean to be Christian ministers? And do all you do to the glory of God.
Yes.
And I don't think that means all you do does glorify God. I don't think all I do brings glory to God, but reflecting Jesus Christ, who we live in and who lives in us, is what it's all about. It's really not all about because how many people are loaded with really demons. They're messed up, addicted from here to kingdom come in a pile of ways. And they're brilliant musicians. They have brilliant bands. They write incredible songs. I wouldn't say they write incredible lyrics. If you look at what the lyrics are actually saying, I wouldn't. Their lifestyle is like in the toilet. It's a train wreck. You wouldn't want your daughter or your sister to go out with one, or you wouldn't want your son to marry one. But you look at these folks and you think, that's it? That's it? And I know this gets up the nose of my fellow musicians, but I don't care. I mean, if I don't care more about you than your music, what am I doing? If I don't care more about you than your music, well, I may just bankroll your addiction, your train wreck.
Yes.
So I just think we've got to think deeper about what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we interact with others. And hey, we've done piles of festivals and clubs and different dates with bands. Nobody in the band knows Jesus, or one or two, or the key person does, but the others don't. Again, what's your witness? What's your I don't mean John 3:16 them, put your knee in their throat in the back room and you rotten sinner, you need to get saved. I'm not talking about that. But building bridges and reaching out and recognizing we're not simply here to get on stage and wow the crowd and sell a pile of music and go home. This is not about we conquered Cleveland. That's not what it's about.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And Glenn, I think that the sooner we realize that we are in a band to glorify God, not to glorify ourselves, that puts the purpose and the focus where it needs to be. And it really solves that old question, are we Christians in a band or are we Christian bands? The answer is we are Christians all the time, and we are the only God that people see, the only way that some people are going to have to find him. That's a humbling thought, but it's also a mandate, and it ought to be exactly where we live. Who's being glorified? Is it me or is it God? And Glenn, I want to pick up here next time. And if we can do it next time, I'd love to just do this frequently. As people are checking in, there's a whole lot of band people watching us today. I recognize the names as people coming in, people from bands all over the world. And I appreciate the opportunity, folks, that you're joining us and that you're listening. But I also love the opportunity to share some wisdom with you. And this guy's got some wisdom. He's been doing it for a while. Wisdom is knowledge with a little bit of practice and a whole lot of experience, and that's what Glenn is talking about. He's done a few concerts here and there. Yeah, just a couple. Glenn, thank you so much.
Well,
for joining me.
Bob, thanks for being my friend. Thanks for loving Jesus and following him and caring about people. I know a number of folks in Nashville and elsewhere who really do what they do out of love for people and love for Jesus and a real caring heart, for the musicians. But I don't know half as many as I wish I did.
Yeah.
It's easy to focus on self. It takes some time.
Yes.
And maybe some hard lessons for the Holy Spirit to finally go, hey, and you actually heard him. Oh, I'm thinking of, I think it's in Psalms. Oh, if my people would listen to me. You're listening to lots of music. Do you listen to me? It's like, what's going on? And I just appreciate the opportunity. I'm happy to do it again. Give me a holler. We'll go. Bob, bless you. Bless Sanctuary and bless everybody that showed up today and stuck around. I know some of this is a bit like a root canal from me. So is some of your music, y'all. That's cool. I'm there. I'm like, that's great. Early metal from the ground up. In fact, for me, the more slamming, the better. And when I'm going to that genre to listen as a fan, but it's one of those things where the opportunities to hopefully encourage people to get serious about the Lord and serious about sound and frequencies.
Yes.
And learning to get on each other's and hear each other's frequency and respect and reach out with grace to each other. That's what it's about.
Band together. Yes. Glenn, I love you.
I love you too, my friend. You know it.
Give your wife, Wendy, a hug for me too.
I'll be doing it in just about 15 minutes.
Good. And folks, speaking of Nashville, if you're in the Nashville area, this weekend is our gathering. We do once a month. And a whole lot of bands there, Sanctuary Worship Band, and a lot of stuff happening. I'm going to talk about Jesus didn't say that. Things that people assume that Jesus said in the scripture that he didn't. And we're going to talk about that this weekend. And then, of course, Sunday is always our Sunday morning worship, our Sunday morning service at 10:30 a.m. Basically, Socratic discussion with some worship again. Teach, meet, eat, pray is our focus. And as always, Glenn, love you to death. Thank you so much. Once again, we'll get you scheduled in again soon, and let's pick up from here and talk about band ministry and experience. And you have a million stories, and I want to hear some more.
God have mercy.
We'll have story time. I'd love that. So, folks, next week, Saving Jackie is with us. And then later on in the month, we've got Scott Waters. We've got a lot of great things happening on this show. And thank you for joining me once again. And don't forget, you are blessed. So go and be a blessing.